Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the interview prep series for QA TechTalk community. I'm sure you've been enjoying your previous ones. My name is Ruchika. I'm lead test consultant at ESG Group, and today I've got Neha, who is the test lead at RACV, and she'll be sharing her experience and interview tips from uh, a recruiter's perspective. So far we have done it from the interviewee's perspective. Today we are going to do it from a recruiter's perspective, like what a recruiter is looking for. So looking forward to some interesting tips and techniques from Neha. Welcome, Neha.
Thank you,
Uh,
Ruchika. Thank you, QA Tech Talks, for having me. It's really pleasure to share my experience and the insight about my journey and how I can help the QA community.
yeah. Brilliant. So just a bit of housekeeping. I'll keep asking Neha some questions. Um, and while we are going through this conversation, feel free to add your questions into the chat, and we can get through them after the um, interview is done. All right. So Neha, tell us something about yourself.
Sure, Ruchika. So about myself, I'll say in testing, I have 12 plus years of experience in testing. I have done bachelor's and master's in computer science, and I have worked in multiple countries in different domains. And everyone will agree with me that it's been like a past 1.5, 2 years. It's been quite tough for most of us, I'll say, and with this COVID time. And some of
Mhm.
us been fortunate enough to have a job. And yes, some of us have lost it as well. So this session, like as in, I'll say like now we have a vaccination rollout soon. So the hope is that, yes, we are at the end of the tunnel and we'll be soon out of the pandemic. So this session is basically my attempt, I'll say, to help the job seekers and anyone who's looking out for a job to share my experience and the tips that can definitely help in the journey when looking for the testing practices.
Brilliant. Can you tell us a bit about the company that you're working in? Like what sort of culture it is, and in terms of technicalities, what sort of technical stack you are working with?
Mm. Sure, Ruchika. So the company I'm working with is RACV. I'm a test lead in RACV. And since my background is in testing and I'm very much passionate about testing processes, so defining the testing framework from the scratch and defining the testing processes end to end. So my journey with the RACV is, yes, I'm a test lead there. And about the organization, RACV is a Royal Automobile Club of Victoria. It's a motoring club and the organization that provides wide range of product and the services across different range, like as in home, leisure, mobility, motoring, finance, and insurance. And I've been like fortunate enough to be part of this organization. So I started with RECV this January. And like, as I said, I'm fortunate to be part of this organization. It takes so well, I'll say like it takes so well care of its employees. And especially as it's a COVID time and 1.5, 2 years been stressful for most of us. And it's quite important that the employers, they take care, they take well care of the employees. And RACV, I'll say, is 100% aligned to this.
That's great. That's good to hear that you're working in a really good place. Before we jump into questions, I think I'd go by saying that testing is important to ensure quality of the product. There's a myth that testing is just testing the quality of product that goes into production. Is there anything you want to highlight from the testing misconceptions?
Sure. About the misconceptions, like we have like a different myths about testing. So to start with, the first one I see like, oh, anyone can do testing. That's the
Yeah.
biggest myth, I'll say. it's not just about like clicking a button and working on that. It's going to work like that way. It's definitely
Mhm.
not. You need a special expertise when it comes to testing. And the thing is like when like if we are given a certain set of instructions and we need to execute it, so definitely I'll say the bean counting managers, they'll be very happy if we just have to go through the instructions and execute it. But there will be like 100 of things that will be overlooked. So as a good managers, they'll always expect a quality product, it goes into the production. So that's the biggest misconception I'll say from the testing.
Mhm.
The other misconceptions like I would like to highlight is the testers, they are not technical. And to be honest, this sets my teeth on edge when I hear this, that testers are not technical. I think everyone would agree. It's when we come into the testing world, it's really beyond what we do. It's not just the testing, it's beyond that. So
Mm.
we play the role of each and every, I'll say, BAs, developers, and all the fields. So technically, like when we say yes, the technical testing, it's not about just writing a piece of code and debugging, because developers, they have their own, I'll say, they have their own expertise. They are the problem solvers. But as a QA, we are the problem finders. So that's where it's interesting and it's a biggest misconception. The other
Mm.
one I'll say is some people think, oh, testing is just about writing the test cases and executing it. No, I'll say it's a biggest no for me. We need 3 C's for the testers. That goes into communication, creativity, and like that's the biggest, and the curiosity. If you fit in 3 C's, oh, you are a good testers, great testers.
Yes.
The other misconception I'll say is everything can be automated. Yes, automation is a great word, is a fancy word, and most of the organizations, they are looking for automation. Everything can be automated. I'll say no. Still, we need a human eyeball, a manual testing. Even like when we have a requirement of a technical tester, it's not like 100% technically, like, the automation will be there. At least like 20-30%, it requires a manual effort. So we do need a human eyeball. That's again a biggest
Mm.
misconception. Then I'll say is that test at the end, like, there's another misconception that the testing, it can be executed at the end. Yes, I'll say yes and no to this, because if we are following a agile methodology, then with the agile, we have a user stories, and then parallelly, the testers, they do the testing. But if we are following a waterfall methodology, the testing, it's not like we have to do the testing at the end.
Mhm.
And everyone would agree with me, like, when we have a requirement, that's the only time the testers, they get involved in. So before, the execution starts, there's lot of work that is required from the testers.
Mhm.
So brainstorming the requirements, then preparing everything is in place before the execution starts in, and so many other things, like, so the test scripts itself is always in the maintenance phase. And these are the certain misconceptions I feel that, yes, still exist in our, in the
Mm.
open
That's
space.
true. That's very true. I agree with all your points on that. Having been in testing myself for quite a long time, I totally agree with your points. So, as a test lead, you'd have interviewed a lot of candidates. Can you please tell me, like, what sort of roles you have hired and what your recruitment process is in your organization?
Sure. Being from the testing background and as a test lead, I have the roles like I have hired in the past organizations, and with the current company, RAC, I'm working with, is normally it involves around, like, say, if it is for system integration testing, or it's say user acceptance testing, or say technical tester, system tester. So these are the roles, like it's like a mix and match depending on the roles and responsibilities and the requirement of the organization that I have like hired in the past and in the current organization.
Mhm.
Yeah. And sorry, what was your, Ruchika, the next
So,
point?
what's your recruitment process?
Sure. So the recruitment process, I'll say normally, like in generic, I'll say what I have seen in the past experience, it follows three-step process. So the step one is where HR gives you a call. And but before that, before we go into the HR round, there's a big thing, resume, that needs to
Mm,
be filtered and screened. And once that's filtered, that goes into the human eyeball, which is our HR. And the step one would be the HR giving you a call, and the HR normally, like what I have seen in the past experience and experience, like the type of questions that are being asked by the HR is, have you ever, like, what do you know about the company? Tell me about yourself. So this is ideally like more of a communication to get more insight about yourself. Why are you looking for a job change? And other questions would be like around what is your salary expectations. So these are certain questions that HR goes through and tries to find out, yes, if the candidate has a right communication skill, and if yes, that checkbox is ticked, then we go on to step two. So the step two would be a technical interview. The technical
mhm,
interview, this will be with the test lead and the managers, where the questions will be asked more on like a behavior questions to assess your capabilities, that do you are like, are you the right candidate for a job, do you have a right skill sets. So that will be the step two. And the step three will be the higher management interviewing. So this is more of like, yes, you are culturally fit for the organization, and yes, you're going to accomplish and aspire, like you're going to do all like what is being expected from the company, like what's the expectation of the company. So that's more of like a meet and greet. So
mhm.
just to summarize, I'll say like with the past and even with the current organization, it's like a three-step process. So HR giving a call, and then technical interview, and the meet and greet with the high management.
Mhm. Brilliant. So I guess there is a purpose for each round, right?
Exactly,
Um,
yeah.
so I guess for meet and greet also, we say that it's quite casual, but it must be more to look at if the person is fit for the team and how to work with the person, isn't it?
Definitely, definitely. So there's beyond. So even with the screening, the way it starts, if say the HR selects five or
Mm,
six candidates, then that's a step one. Step two, it cuts down to say three, and the step three would be two. I mean, that's
yeah,
how it works.
brilliant. So what are you looking for a person in an interview?
That's a very good question. I think most of the audience will be interested to know, like, what are we looking for when we are interviewing a candidates? So to start with, I'll say, let's start off like, if I'm interviewing, what I'll be looking for is first, am I getting the right answers to the questions being asked? That's the most important thing I feel, because what I have seen in my experience is most of the candidates, they come up overly prepared, and
Mm,
uh, that's a biggest turnoff. And what happens is they come up with their canned answers. So if I'm asking a question, they're answering something which is nowhere related to the question. So my tip here would be listen carefully and calmly. And also, like, the biggest turnoff here I see is, say, like, if you are answering something, and if the interviewer is answering is asking you a question, and you are thinking something in your mind ahead of what is being like questioned, that's again a biggest turn off. So here the thing is, listen carefully and to the questions which are being asked, have an eye contact with the interviewer. That definitely helps a lot. The other thing would be body language, or it matters a lot. So slouching definitely is no no. So have a
mm,
good body posture, have a nice, like a good smile, eye contact with the interviewer. And if the candidates are nervous, definitely, like, even if I go for a presentation or anyone goes in, like, yes, some sort of nervousness is expected, but take a deep breath, be patient, and listen carefully. Everything will go well. So the other thing, like what I'm looking for is candidate flexible enough? So by what I mean by saying flexible enough is most of my questions, like the behavior questions, which I put forward to the candidate, I'll get to know the attitude. I'll get a clue from the candidate if the candidate is flexible enough or not. See, taking an example, say if I ask a question that in the current organization, say like if the scope of the project is that there is going to be a minimal support and we do not have enough test cases. So my question will be to the candidate, have you ever worked in a project where there are no test cases and there is a minimal support? How do you approach this? Now, there are two things the candidate can answer. There are two ways, either yes, I have worked in, or no. So that shows, that gives a clue to the interviewer that a candidate isn't like, passionate, isn't even showing an excitement to work in the environment which he hasn't even worked of. So that's again a key most important thing, to be flexible enough. The other thing which I look for is, yes, does a candidate has a right personality to do the job? So what I mean by saying a right personality is, say if the job, it requires a lot of communication and the candidate is introvert, definitely it's going to be a no-no for me. So personality fit has to be like, as a, it has to fit into the job. Then other things would be to highlight would be the right skills. Does a candidate has a right skills experience which we are looking for? So this is more of like a technical, say if current project, I'm looking for someone who has experience in the postman. So my questions will be formulated around that. So I'm going to assess those, that does a candidate has the right skills or not. The other things would be, is a candidate self-starter? This is very, very important, I'll say, because no one would ever want someone to spoon feed. So I'll definitely look for the clues that shows that candidates, they are independent, they can start on their own, because no one would like to, that the candidates twiddle their thumbs and are being told of, or do this, do that. No, definitely. So that's what I'm like, if I'm interviewing, definitely I look for. Then a few more things that I look for is like cultural fit, which is important as well. And my biggest tip here would be honest, that pays you long run. Trust me. And the last thing to highlight here, what I look for is that is a candidate, does a candidate like a respect for the management? That is very, very important, because company wants, even though you have all the technical skills, you tick all the checkbox, company wants the candidates who respects the management. And while interviewing, if most of your questions, your answers, your stories are around, I have done something, again, not against, but something beyond like the management, as I have gone that way, which management didn't want it. And you're trying to put others down, that doesn't comes along well. So yes, respecting a management is the key most important thing. So these are certain things, which I look for when I'm interviewing.
That's great. I'm sure people would have got some really nice tips from this. So, what's the difference between your interview questions for various roles? So, like, there might be some technical roles, as you mentioned, and some non-technical, not that technical roles as well. Is there a difference between your questions that you ask?
Sure. Well, on that note, I'll say definitely there is a difference. If I'm hiring for a sit tester, then my questions will be revolved around, like it will be focused on system integration testing. Does a candidate has the right skill sets? If we have integrated component, how it's going to be tested? Then if it is related to the user acceptance testing, then I'll be thinking more of like customer point of view. Does a candidate can think of, beyond that framework, that where it says, yes, if he put into the customer shoes, he can think of that on those lines. And if it is related to system testing or technical, so basically again, well, it all depends on the role.
That's correct. That's very true. Cool. Moving on to the next question. What sort of questions do you ask around testing techniques and strategies?
For testing techniques and strategies, my questions are mostly to see that how well the candidate answers the question. Does the candidate has the right skill sets with the testing processes. So my questions are more likely very closely knitted to that. So giving some examples, say I ask, like, if you're given a user story to test, what's your approach? How are you going to test it? So by this question, what I'm looking for is basically what is an approach the candidate takes and how he handles end-to-end testing process. So the ideal answer, what I'm looking for, just giving an answer for the wider audience, not just, giving the question. So what the ideal answer would be, yes, if I'm given a user story, then as a step one, what I'm going to do, I'm going to see that that story has all the details which is required. If not, then I'm going to approach the BA or the like whosoever is a relevant person. Then my second step would be write the test cases. And when you write the test cases, make sure that we do the RTM, that is the requirement traceability metrics. So this is to ensure that we have a sufficient coverage and nothing is being skipped. That's again the most important thing. So have a requirement traceability metrics. And then if there are defects, raise a defect, and remember, never ever forget to link a defect to the test case. That's again important. And then have a defect tried. So all these things are certain things which I'm looking for when I'm when I'm asking such sort of testing technique questions. The other thing would be like other questions which I normally ask is, say, what information do you put in when you raise a defect? This is to ensure, this is quite important because no one wants to go back and forth between a developer and a tester. So this question is basically to assess, yes, the tester has a right skill set. He knows what information, test evidence that we need to put in. Then it would be, the other would be like, say, if the developer says, no, that's not like a defect, what is your approach? And if it is more about like technical testing, so my question would be like, what, like as a testing, what automation, like what percentage of automation is being done, and how will you set up a testing framework? So, and all those questions basically gives a gist of what, that how well the candidate is with the testing processes and framework.
That's very nice. Brilliant. I guess these all things are really important for a tester, isn't it? Like what goes in the defect, how do you do the testing of a story? These are the main,
Definitely.
like the bread earners for us, isn't it?
Exactly. I completely agree.
Yeah. In terms of technical questions, like you just mentioned a bit about framework as well. What kind of questions do you ask around tools, frameworks, etc.?
Sure. So if it is a technical, say the technical requirement for a job, the questions ideally it depends upon the tools which are being used. Say if it is solely related to setting up the automation framework and starting it from scratch. So my question would be, what percentage of automation can be done? So that would be the first thing to think of. If there are
Mhm.
3 or 4 markets, sorry, 3 or 4 tools available in the market, what is your approach? How are you going to decide which tool best fits for this particular piece of work? If it is related to the backend is in database. So my majority of my questions will be around the database validation spot checks, like joint queries, which I think every tester like should know, like that's quite basic, like normal select queries, joint queries. And if it is related to API, that's Postman, or we're using Postman or SOAP UI, my questions will be revolving around like what's the difference between get and post? And that's like a very simple question, but who hasn't done it won't be able to crack it.
Mm.
And like other would be what are the different status code you see when you test in a Postman? That's again quite interesting question to see the insight of, does a candidate has the right experience? Because what happens is, what I have seen is sometimes candidate fake as well, and that's very easy to make it.
True,
So
true, true.
yeah, and simple questions I think
Yeah,
is quite easy to get out. Yes, the candidate has an experience in this field or not.
that's very true. Yeah, sometimes You just have to ask simple questions to get understand if you need to go ahead or stop right there.
Exactly.
Um, do you ask candidates to do any like coding tests of any sort or before the interviews? If yes or
Mhm.
not, like what are your thoughts around on those?
About the coding, I'll say it all depends upon the requirement. And like in the past, what I have seen, yes, we were giving the candidates. So there was like a BDD framework which was already established, and we were asking a candidate to enhance the script, giving certain scenarios to script
Mhm.
it. So it wasn't like asking them to write a piece of code from the scratch, giving the
Yeah.
existing framework and asking certain scenarios at top of it. And my thoughts on this is that if we have a requirement of a technical tester, by giving this as a prerequisite before interviewing, it gives a really good insight of about the candidate's skill, I'll say. Because see,
Mhm.
the thing is, like with the code, there are so many ways to write a code. You can write one piece of code in 15 lines, or you can write it in 2 lines. And when
Mhm.
you give such sort of assignments, you can make it out like how well the candidate is equipped with the coding.
That's true. That's very true. So that was about technical questions. What about the behavioral questions? I guess you covered a bit in the start, but is there anything else? What sort of behavioral questions you ask?
Sure. I think we have a lot of like audience in here, and definitely I'm going to try my best to give like whatever behavior questions which I have seen in the past experience. And mostly they are being asked, like I'll say 70% they've been asked. There's certain frame of questions. So one would be like describe a time when something went wrong and you took a control. So that's like a just to see that how well you are equipped with the testing processes. The
Mhm.
other would be describe a time where you haven't worked on a piece of work and you are being asked to do something and you were successful. So ideally, these behavior questions are being asked to assess that are you like do you have that aspect to yes I can do a work, and to assess your past experience. Then the other would be like, have you ever had a disagreement with the stakeholders? So this is more of like if you have a disagreement with the stakeholders, how you deal with it. This is to find out the candidate's attitude, how the candidate reacts to such questions.
Mhm.
And certainly there are other questions like give me an example of a time when you set a goal and you were able to accomplish it. The other questions would be how you deal with the stress. So these are certain questions I would say, yes, definitely like in behavior question, mostly I have seen and what I have known are being asked in the interviews.
Nice. I guess the audience have got quite a comprehensive list of questions to prepare for interviews. I guess I would like to add to that. Always think about the behavioral question, answering the behavioral questions in the STAR format. Like, what was the situation? What was the task? What action did you take? And what was the outcome? So that gives a bit of structure to your answers. So always prepare for the behavioral questions in that format, so that your answers will be bang on. Nice.
Definitely, I completely agree with this one because that gives very structured, as you said, Ruchika, that gives very structured information about maybe probably like in the coming upcoming questions, we can give an example of how to approach the star questions,
Mhm.
how to answer that.
Definitely. So, are there any key areas that that people should consider when preparing for interviews, that you would suggest?
Sure. So, well, on that note, I'll say there are certain key areas that needs to be considered before preparing the interview. One would be to start with practice, I'll say. So, prepare for the interview. And like what I have seen, 90% of the candidates, they come up like unprepared. So, do what 90% aren't doing. Use your time wisely. Give your 100%. I'll say. And use mirror. So this is not just to see how fantastic you look like. No, because mirror, I'll say, is a significant booster. Even today, like I've been like, even I'm interviewing or I've gone through the interviews. Whenever I have to give a presentation, I use mirror. It's a significant confident booster. Trust me, guys. And the other would be, yes, have a mock interviews with your family members, friends, just to see what flaws we have and how we can improve on. And the other thing to be considered would be research for the company you're going for an interview. That's quite important, trust me. So what happens is, like, as an icebreaker, when we go for the interview, normally the interviewer asks the question, tell me about yourself. And then they start with, so do you know something about the organization? And that's really very important. And it forms the foundation of most of the questions that will be asked. So search for the organization, products, services that's being offered. Because what I feel is interviewing is not just about answering the question. It's more of like spinning the conversation to the best of your abilities, to showcase your strength and your abilities, I'll say. So just, practice, 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 and research for the organization you're going for. The other thing would be personalize your answers. So when I say like personalize your answers, what I mean is, because when we are looking for a job, definitely we are applying for hundreds and hundreds of our as in the jobs, and we forget sometimes what job have we applied for before going for an interview, or before, you get a call. Just be prepared of what sort of, like, as in the job description the company has. That's quite important. And mirror your words, phrases in your resume that very well matches with your job description. That's important too. And practice, as Ruchika has already mentioned, that always, we should use a star approach. So list down the questions with looking at the job's description and the responsibilities. Think of the questions that can be asked during the interview, and prepare the questions with the STAR approach, as like situation, task, action, and the result. So giving a small example, I want to give, like, how we can fit a STAR approach is, say we have there's a question that's being asked. Tell me about, like, simple question, how you deal with the stress. So use a STAR approach. So come up with the situation. So start with, stress is important to me. And important in a way, not in that aspect, but yes, a good pressure, it keeps you moving, having a lot of assignments and all those things. And how you deal with the stress, come up with the task. So task would be, in my previous organization, I was given 30 test cases to be executed in like 2 or 3 days time. So that's a task. So as an action, what did you do? I prioritize my task. So that's quite important, that interviewer gets to know how you're approaching the problem. And what was it, as a STAR approach, what was the result, what was an outcome? It was a great achievement, and we were able to execute all the test cases with our deadlines. So that's how, like, come up, like, prepare with your list, prepare the list of strengths, your weaknesses. That can definitely, like, help you a lot. Again, practice. The other thing to be considered would be like value. So yes, before the interview, like, we definitely prepare with all the technical questions, we prepare the answers, STAR approach, but think of certain ways how you can add a value to the organization you're going to work for. So taking a simple example, say if I have this pen and I ask you guys, like, how you going to sell this pen? Most of us will say, oh, it's a nice color, it's quite glossy, it has a nice script. No, that's not a good answer I'm looking for. So sell the need, I'll say, to create a demand that relates to the pen feature. So sell I'll say, your skills, your abilities, showcase them, that you are a best fit for your role. And try connecting a dot from your past organization to the current organization, how you can add a value to the organization. And the last thing I would like to highlight would be that key areas to be considered is a congeniality factor, which is quite important as well. So this is more of like, yes, you're preparing, doing all the research for the organization, preparing all the technical skills, but think of how you can be likable in the interview. That's important as well. Because see, after all, we all are humans and we want something like, as in start with, just touch it. So highlight whatever you think can bring the attention of the interviewer. Say like when the interview, before the interview starts, if the question is being asked like, oh, how was your day? Tell me about yourself. So that way you can just, have a smile and be like, relate something and highlight yours, anything like that is out of your job or work related. So
That's
these are
really
certain
nice.
things that I feel like, yes, needs to be
Yeah,
considered.
it's like giving a personal touch and creating a relationship with the interview right there, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's really nice. Yeah. Half the battle is won there.
Oh, of course, completely agree.
So, are there any tips for the freshers who are looking for job? So how they should prepare for interviews and all?
So definitely like certain tips which I would like to share would be first thing first, resume. This is quite important. Make your resume concise, because what I have seen is 8, 9, 10 pages resume. That's like it's too much. No one is interested to go through those pages. It's a big documentation. Make it 2 or 3 pages, concise. So that's quite important. The other thing would be like, don't stop yourself after you have applied online. Reach the internal recruiters and establish your network. The other tip would be, don't consider your resume as a tattoo. Definitely not. Consider it as like a breathing document, I'll say. So modify it throughout your search, and definitely it's gonna pay you like long run. Even like I'll say, if your resume is fantastic, your LinkedIn is breathtaking, modify it. Mirror the words and the phrases. So make it like a breathing document. That helps in the journey. The other would be I'll say is definitely like, these are certain things I consider are quite important when we search for the job. And
Mhm.
the last thing I would like to say is that thank you note. It matters a lot. So when you go for the interview, remember, yes, it's always good to say thank you. Maybe if you have an email ID of the interview, say thank you, how you approach, and even you don't know the outcome, it's important. And sorry, I did mention it's the last, but the one thing I shouldn't, I should highlight is the LinkedIn, which is very, very important. 90% of the recruiters are on LinkedIn. And if you do not exist on LinkedIn, you barely, I'll say, exist. So try building your networking and approach the internal recruiters. So these are certain things, tips I would advise for the job seekers or anyone who's reaching out for a job.
Mhm. Great. Are there any other interview questions apart from the list that you have shared so far that you would like to share with with our audiences over here?
Sure, Ruchika. So, like most of them, like I covered, I think, in our previous questions, but certain questions, which again, like I'm just thinking of, would be like, tell me about a time when you motivated others. Then, other word would be, what motivates you as a tester? That is more like interviewer wants to know. Like, are
Mhm.
you passionate about testing, or it's just that for the sake of money you're working?
Yeah, yeah.
And how you manage your workload. Then describe a time where you showed you have taken an initiative and you took a control of. These are certain things, like I think I pretty much, I think in my our previous questions I
Yes,
covered and are commonly asked.
that's very true. I think a brilliant list of questions and tips that you've shared, Neha. Let's go through the audience questions.
Sure.
So Rohit Khare, he's asked, Ma'am, interviewer asks a question and I don't know the answer. So how we will answer the question? So do you have any tips on, like, if you don't have any answer to the question that interviewer has asked, what should we do?
Sure. So that's a good question, because it does happens that when the interviewer comes up with the questions and you don't know the answer. And my tip here, Rohan, it will be like, be honest, don't fake it, because
Mhm.
it's quite easy to make it out that the candidate is faking around. So, but again, on that note, don't be like, I don't know this question. No, don't come up that way. Just say, yes, I haven't worked in this particular tool in the past, but again, like, I'm a quick learner. That's quite important. Mention that I'm a quick learner and I pick up things quite quickly. So formulate it in that way that shows the interviewer that even if you don't know it, you have a capability to pick up something and you learn it. So it
That's
shouldn't be
true.
like a blunt no.
Exactly. Or you might have done something similar. So, for example, someone asks you a question around Postman, but you have worked on some other API testing tool. Then you can say, I've not worked on Postman, but I have worked on this other API tool. So, Postman might be just a bit different. I can learn, as Neha said, like, I'm a quick learner, I will learn, and things like that. So, yeah, don't
Yeah,
say a blunt no.
because yeah, that definitely gives the interviewer that if we have 10 questions and you have
Yeah.
answered 8 questions, two you aren't sure, but you are still keen and you're showing the initiator that yes, I'm happy to learn and I can be in the journey. That's like again
Yeah.
like a good thing.
Yes, definitely. So Bhushan has asked, um, interviewer always asks, tell any challenge in your current or previous project and you solved it. What should we tell them? It's not compulsory we are facing any such great issue to be told in an interview. I think it's a good question. It's a really
Mm.
good question. Yeah.
Now, definitely. So I'm just going through. Tell any challenge in your current or previous project you have solved in. Sure. And
But
what
you have
should we
not really have had any challenges. So how do you answer it?
That's quite interesting. Uh, to me, I feel like you haven't have any challenge that couldn't be like 100% true. Definitely, like from testing, we always and always have one or the other challenge.
Yeah.
So again, like coming back to this question, that if even if you didn't have any challenge, you can just say it gently that maybe you can say it in a way that yes, the challenge was that maybe like you didn't come across a big challenge, a small part of a testing, that we came up across a scenario and there were no requirements, nothing was in place. That was the biggest challenge, and I approached it in that way, in some sort of like I approached the stakeholders, or I asked someone. Again, like saying like if you haven't faced a challenge, saying no, I haven't come across any challenge, that would be like it's not like it I wouldn't say impossible, but again, like definitely when you are testing, we come across different challenges. So even the smallest thing, you can highlight it.
Yeah. I guess another thing I would like to add to that is one of the challenges everyone has gone through is coming on board with a new domain. So you might have, when you started on a new project, like that's a challenge in itself. Like you had to learn about everything, what approach you had to learn that thing. So that's the easiest thing that you can talk
Mm,
about when you're talking about challenges.
exactly.
So yeah. Um, Nirav has asked if all the evidence like images, video recording of bug occurrence provided while raising bug in Jira, even though if developer is not agreed to accept the bug, unable to reproduce or and again assign the Jira back to testers, then how to deal with it? So developer is
That's
missing.
really, really good question, Neera, because I think from the testing background, most of us come across this scenario where we raise a defect and it gets rejected by the developer. Now, how to approach this would be, yes, definitely when we raise a defect as a tester, we put all the test evidence. And sometimes it happens, it's an intermittent issue, it's not happening on the developer's side. So what you do or how you deal with this situation would be, like, step one, try to replicate with the exact same steps and see that if the issue is occurring. If the issue is not occurring, then definitely I'll say, like, the time you raise the issue, go back to the logs. And if you do not have access to the logs, ask the developer, seek developers' help. See, maybe like there are certain exceptions which are thrown at particular day of a time, or maybe it's a performance issue that, say, at 12 or 1 in the morning, that the system breaks and whole day it's working fine. So that would be like, basically, I would say, try to replicate the issue, then get the logs, troubleshoot it, and try like 5 or 7 times to see if it is consistent or not, or it is an intermittent issue. And again, like, having said this, if it is intermittent, like, check the backend if you have access to the backend, if something is wrong, some excess issue or anything. And yes, grab all the evidence and see, check the logs. And if you don't have an access to the logs, seek developers' help.
Yep, definitely. What to answer if so it's user one, I don't know who that is. What to answer if the question is what your next action would be when issue is found in production that was tested by you. So something has been tested by you, but that issue has again occurred in production. So what will your action be? I think that's what the question is.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's a good question, whosoever user one is. So definitely, like, it's, after all, we are humans. It's not like everything is going to be like happy in production, no issues. But definitely, we need to try our best that there are minimal incidents, minimal production issues. And what would be our next step? Like, if the issue is found in production, like if I'm testing a piece of code and it is broken in production, so my approach would be, first of all, I need to analyze how come this issue is being missed from my side. So was there a requirement gap, or was it something that I missed in my test script? So that would be my first step. Then the other would be, yes, now we know issue has occurred and we have to correct it. We need to move forward. So my next approach would be, I need to update my test script. So don't forget to update your test script. So update your test script as well with whatever is being missed. And definitely, like, yes, I would say, then do a regression when it goes like next live isn't, whenever there's a next live in production, do a regression test and ensure everything is being covered.
Nice. I guess if that issue was already tested by you and it's happening again in production, then you can also ask the developer if they have deployed the right version or not.
Oh, exactly. Because it's not
I mean,
always the tester's fault.
I know, right? We've all been blamed at some point of time.
Exactly. But now, like, I think, yes,
It's changing.
everyone should understand, like, we are working as a team. It's not just, tester's fault. Yes, we are working as a team, and yeah.
Yeah, and it's changing nowadays.
Yes, definitely.
So Ankita has asked, what should we mainly ask if an interviewer asked that, do you have any question? That's a really good one. So what sort of questions should we ask?
Sure. So Ankita, that's like the question, like normally, like, yes, when we have an interview, end of the interview, we give a chance to the candidate, yes, if they have any question. And again, like on that, what sort of questions can be asked? So read the job description very carefully. And normally, like if I give an example of like what I have seen in the past, if I'm interviewing, say if it is waterfall, so ask certain questions, like, because either we'll have waterfall or agile, what sort of like, which methodology is being followed? That's quite common. You can ask that. What's the existing team structure? Like how many testers are there, and this. And the other thing you can ask, or ask, even we are not sure we'll be hired or not, say if, like, you can ask if I'm hired, or like, if I'm lucky enough to be part of the organization, what is the expectation? Like what expectations do you have from the, like from me, like from day one? So these type of questions that you can, articulate or can ask the interviewer.
Nice. And she also asks how to start our career in testing if one is a fresher.
Sure, definitely. So on that note, Ankita, like I'll say that if you like, if we want to start a journey of testing, to start with, do a basic certification, ISTQB certification. That's really, really important, because doing that ISTQB foundation certification will give you the basics of testing, which is quite important. And then if once you are certified in testing, then I would say is definitely like look for the jobs. And maybe if the job seekers, they are looking for a job and the organizations are looking for the experienced candidates, then I'll say is maybe to gain that experience, go for the voluntary jobs, 5 or 6 months, just to have that experience. And that really helps. And once you have that industrial experience and you have done a certification, then you can start your journey wherever you want to apply for.
Yeah, definitely. So Pooja has asked what to answer if the interviewer asked question that what is your approach when you start manual testing?
That's again like a good question. So approach for a manual testing, if we are starting a manual testing, again, like the approach will be, yes, we have the requirements in place. Then do we have the tools first, like a test management tool? Do we have Jira? Do we have whatever test management tool we are using? Do we have that in place? And the other would be, yes, write your test scripts and ensure that everything is covered, whatever you can think of. And if there are certain validation backend spot checks required, so brainstorm with the developers and put that information in your test scripts. So from manual testing, I'll say that do all the pre-work, like as in from the pre-work well on time, so that by the time we start execution, we have everything in place.
Mm, yep, I guess. So Rajshri is asking. So I guess these are like interviewer questions. And how do you answer these? Why do you want to join this organization? And what are your next 5-year plans? So like, how should we answer these questions?
Sure. So, when it comes to why you want to work with this organization, again, whenever the organization they are posting their job, look very carefully what is in the job description. Because what I have seen is, say, taking an example of my current organization, RACV, I'm working with. And when they posted their job, it was very well written that they take care of the employees, about the well-being, and it's been highlighted. So such things you can come up with, that yes, I looked at the job description, and that I'm quite fascinated, and I'm interested that how the company aligns with the well-being of the employees. Or say like, maybe like you can say that you are, if it's working on certain technology, if taking an example, if it is automotive, defense industry, say that it's work, like I'm quite keen, I haven't worked in such technologies, and I want to build my career. And that's quite, I'm impressed with. So you can come up with those sort of questions that can be approached in this aspect.
Yeah, I guess it's more about what's important for you in your career
Exactly.
and how the organization is aligning with those things.
Mhm.
That's the things that you can talk about. So it could be like the technical trainings that the company is
Mhm.
providing, the L&D process, or whatever else you see. Just talk about those things.
So the next 5-year plan to impress the interviewer. So first thing first, say, firstly, like I want to be part of the organization. baby steps. And then say like, yes, my 5-year plan would be like, definitely first I want to go through, like my first year would be going through the domain, be an expertise, and then mention about your career progression, that eventually I want to see, if you're starting as a tester, I want to see myself as a senior tester, or if you're starting as a senior tester, maybe in 5 years I want to see as a test lead, test manager. So that basically shows that yes, you have a career aspirations and you are what you're looking for.
Mm, that's correct. They're just judging you if you're progressive or not.
Exactly.
um, so Ankita has asked a question. I guess we have answered it already, but maybe we can go ahead again for her sake. If we don't know the answer to a question in the interview, then can we give a nearer answer which we know about?
Yeah, definitely, Ankita. Like, we can give the answer which is quite near to the question that is being asked. But again, like as we already gone through this, so my tip here again would be honest, and definitely mention if you haven't worked in, mention it that I haven't worked in, but I'm a quick learner and I'm keen to learn, and I'm quick learner and learn new things quite quickly. So that will give a hint to the interviewer that yes, you are flexible enough.
Yep, brilliant. So Praveen has asked how to get calls if we have 90 days notice period. Uh, I don't know how to answer this one. Maybe you can give it a
So
go.
how to get calls if you have 90 days notice period? Hmm, that's quite interesting. So what I'm trying to understand, how to get a call if it is like a so this is like like a 3 months time, I'll say, is like a big enough time for a notice period. How to get a calls again, like approach the recruiters, I'll say, go with the approach the recruiters and tell them that yes, you are open for a new opportunity, but you still have a time, like you have a nine, like whatever is your notice period, you still have a time. So just be open with the interviewer, I'll say.
Yeah, brilliant. I guess we have reached the hour end. I'll just take one more question, and I guess anyone wants to reach out to Neha, you can always reach out to her on LinkedIn if you've got any further question. We are all on LinkedIn, so you can feel free to ask questions, guidance if you need any through there. But I'll just take one more question. Let me just see one question that will cover something good. All right. Ankita again has asked, and if one can't speak English clearly, fluently, so what are your tips for that?
Sure. On that note, Ankita, I'll say is yes, definitely. We need to improve on English because that's the way of communication in the organizations, and if you are connected to the on-site team. So my biggest tip would be do more of reading. That definitely helps. And read the news, go through the English, like as in like the readings, whatever like you are interested in, and see for the words that you are not familiar with, and keep a mark of, say, like you need to learn 5 new words a day, and definitely that's going to help you. So reading, I'll say.
Yeah, I guess even till today, even now, when I hear a new word, I'm like, quickly go to Google, search for it. What does it mean? So that's one more
Exactly.
word added to my vocabulary. So yeah, definitely read, and I guess watch in English shows or English news and things like that. You will definitely learn and try to talk. Find someone, a friend, a sister, brother, whoever, who will be willing to talk to you an hour a day in English. Do that. I used to fight with my sister in English, for example.
That's a good one.
um, All right, guys. I guess um, we've had a really good and fruitful episode today with Neha. Thank you, Neha, for being here. And we are also running other series like the Techno Lead Talks. If you are interested in QA leadership kind of talks, um, and then there is a QA detective conference also happening next month, 20th and 21st November. So please sign up for that. Also follow QA Tech Talks community page. Omema has shared the links in the chat. So please follow the page and look out for the next events that are happening with us. Thank you, Neha. Thank you, everyone, for being such a lovely audience.
Thank you all. Thanks again for having me. And yes, feel free to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn.
Thanks. Bye
All
bye.
right. Thanks all. Bye.